Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Stefan. I'm president of Portland City Club. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's State of the Region program featuring Metro President Lynn Peterson. So I'll start off with a special favor, kind of the standard one. Please silence your cell phone if you haven't already done so already. Double check. It would really help all of us up here. For more than 100 years, Portland City Club has hosted public forums, debates, and research to help Portlanders make informed decisions around elections and public policy. Things like what occurred yesterday. City Club is committed to providing space for people to gather and engage in civic dialogue. Members make City Club run by providing ideas, leading conversations, doing research, and creating our City Club community. To volunteer for our program committee, our research board, which runs all of our research projects, or even a specific research study, or to get involved with our issues committee, please become a member today. Visit pdxcityclub.org/membership and let us know how you'd like to engage. We welcome you to our public square and thank you for your support now and into the future. Thanks to Sam Metz and Bobby Regan, co-chairs of the City Club's Programming Committee, for producing this program. Special thanks to Kayla Kennett, our communication manager, for her help with this. Please mark your calendars for 2 upcoming and in-person City Club programs. First will be Reflections by retiring Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum. This takes place on Wednesday, June 5th, at 5 p.m. at the First Congregational Church in downtown Portland. After her opening remarks, Ellen will be joined on stage for a lively conversation with moderator Carrie Timchuk, Executive Director of the Oregon Historical Society. Just 2 days later, on Friday, June 7th, we'll welcome Oregon Director of Education, Charlene Williams, to our stage for our State of Education program. She'll be joined in conversation with our moderator for that program, State Representative Wah Win. Join us for that at 4:30 p.m. at the PCC Cascade Moriarty Auditorium. You can register for these upcoming programs at the City Club website at pdxcityclub.org. While you're there, please take the opportunity to join City Club. Okay, now done with the advertising, now today's program. Before introducing Metro Council President Lynn Peterson, I want to take a moment to give some background on Metro itself. Metro was created 45 years ago. It's amazing to think, 45 years ago with Metro becoming the nation's only elected regional government. Metro serves more than 1.7 million Oregonians in Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties, and encompasses 24 cities, including Portland. It is led by President Peterson and 6 regionally elected Metro councilors, as well as an elected auditor. In addition to managing the Oregon Convention Center, the Portland Centers for the Arts, where we are today, Portland Expo Center, and the Oregon Zoo, Metro manages the region's garbage and recycling system, protects clean water and air at more than 18,000 acres of parks and natural areas. This one always astounds me, 18,000 acres of land in this area that Metro is in charge of, that helps all the rest of us. It oversees regional long-range planning and is supporting construction of more than 4,000 affordable homes region-wide, with more on the way. For today's program, Metro President Peterson will give her opening remarks, followed by a conversation with today's moderator, Anna Griffin. After the program, we invite you to a short reception. Anna Griffin is Vice President for News, Talk, and Podcast for Oregon Public Broadcasting. Prior to OPB, Anna spent 11 years as a reporter and editor at the Oregonian and 10 years as a reporter at the Charlotte Observer. She served as a 2011-2012 Nieman Fellow at Harvard University. And for those who don't know, the Nieman Fellowship is this amazing fellowship for journalists where they go to Harvard, they go to Massachusetts, and they spend time with other journalists. And they take their already great skills and they build them even higher. So as a professor, I'm excited by anything called fellowship, to be honest. All right, so it's now my great honor to share some background on our featured speaker, Lynn Peterson, Metro President. Lynn was first elected Metro President in 2019 and was re-elected in 2023. Prior to this role, she served as chair of Clackamas County Commission, and before that, she served on the Lake Oswego City Council. Peterson holds advanced degrees in civil and environmental engineering and urban and regional government and regional planning. She served as secretary of the Washington State Department of Transportation for Governor Inslee and as a senior transportation policy advisor to Oregon Governor John Kitzhaber. Please join me in welcoming Metro President Lynn Peterson.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to City Club. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Portland Center for the Arts. Isn't it a gem? Let's give a round of applause to all of the folks who helped make this happen today. This building, along with the Schnitzer across the street and the Keller Auditorium down the road, are owned by the City of Portland, but operated by Metro. Thank you for being here today to reflect on the current and future opportunities for this amazing region. And a big thank you to the existing and newly elected folks that are in the room, to the business owners here today, to Oregon Metro staff, and to the Metro counselors for navigating complex headwinds for the last several years. Thank you all for your leadership. Leadership requires mentors. There are two people I try to channel when I come to a decision-making place. I ask myself, what would Governor Tom McCall or former Metro Planning Director John Fregonese think about trying to solve the issue of the moment? Governor McCall always tried to find a way to use the spotlight of the media to show the essence of an issue in a visual story. And John believed that the power of people having facilitated conversations to solve thorny issues. Many of you know I worked at Metro from 1995 to 1998. I was a modeler, travel demand modeler. Just as I started, so did John Fregonese, who had been hired to lead the Metro 2040 growth concept. This plan was dubbed a concept, but became a reality that answered the question, what do we want to be when we grow up? John, who left us far too soon in 2018, was an incredible mentor. We'd bike together to work. His optimism, energy, and pride in Oregon was infectious. But he was extremely pragmatic and loved adopting new technical models and visuals to help people see the future. Because of John, we were the first metropolitan planning organization to look at options for the future. Rather than just straight-line forecasting, he challenged assumptions. John wanted to engage people in a way that did not run away from a tough conversation, but toward it, because he trusted people working together. That conversation did incredible things for our region. It helped support one of the nation's best cities for small businesses by keeping our walkable business districts, from Beaverton to Gresham, Oregon City, to the heart of Hillsborough. It supported job growth at Intel, at Nike, at Adidas, I feel like I'm just going down the footwear, at the Port of Portland, and it was true to who we are and who we want to be. But both John and Governor McCall would be the first to say, question your assumptions and don't be complacent. Every politician who gives one of these speeches wants to tell you they're doing a great job. It's not just ego. We take on these challenges because we want to succeed. We want to make a difference, and we want to help our communities and the people in them. I can look at all of you here today with a straight face and say that things in this region are substantially better than they are in a lot of places around our country by many metrics. The greater region continues to be ahead of the curve on livability, environmental protection, and racial equity, because we ran toward the hard conversations 30 years ago. After all, look at where we were in 1995.
Portland, Oregon, a city known for its livability, spectacular scenery, and enviable quality of life. Because of these attractive attributes, Portland is looked upon as a model city throughout the country. But the picture painted of Portland hasn't always been this rosy. Just a little over 20 years ago, the New York Times called Portland a city in the act of destroying itself. Harsh words, but an accurate depiction of Portland at the time. The story of our remarkable turnaround into one of the most livable cities in the country is a tale of visionary leadership and active, committed citizens. A story worth remembering as we face the challenges of the future.
Much like the Oregonians of the past, we are faced with national challenges that affect our regional livability. Decades of disinvestment from the state and federal government on mental health, behavioral health, and affordable housing are our new challenges to confront, and we don't fix them by standing still. Today, I want to lay out some of the things that Metro is working on and some of the things I want to see our region do better. For years, Metro toiled in obscurity, producing regional plans and making sure the trash got out to the landfill and the gorge. But that narrow mission failed to recognize the scope of the challenges facing our region, that we had to invest in ourselves, to sustain ourselves, and that started by supporting people. That's why in 2018, Metro got into housing. Seeing increasing strain on the region housing supply, Metro asked the voters to invest in housing that would be affordable for up to a century. And voters agreed. This regional problem required a regional response. It was and is too big for Tualatin or Fairview or Milwaukee to tackle on their own. To date, we've opened more than 1,400 apartments around the region with another 3,200 in the pipeline. Our affordable housing bond will be fully allocated in the next 18 months. And we told voters we'd build 3,900 new apartments, and we're now on pace to exceed that goal by 20%. That deserves a round of applause. 2 years later, Metro asked the voters to take on one of the nation's most ambitious public efforts to address homelessness, our Regional Supportive Service Housing Measure. This program is intended to provide vouchers for housing and wraparound services to those experiencing or at risk of homelessness. It explicitly does not allow us to use the funding to purchase or build housing because the Affordable Housing Bond Measure was doing that at the time. We launched the Supportive Housing Service System in 2021 with our counties. We are the funder and the oversight body tasked with ensuring money gets out the door effectively and quickly to meet the voters' expectations of fundamentally changing homelessness in our region. That has been a bumpier road. For the tens of thousands who have received benefits from the system, whether that's rent assistance, wraparound services, or just a safe shelter to spend the night, there's no question about the value of these services. But there continues to be struggles with the system as well, between higher than expected revenue collection and the challenges of launching such a massive supportive housing service system. There's close to $500 million of resources that the voters have entrusted to us to consider how to spend. 6 months ago, the staff at Metro began working with a range of stakeholders to float a concept. What if we redirected some of that unspent money toward building more housing? Could we continue that success of building affordable housing by using some of this funding from the supportive housing program rather than launching a new bond measure? In other words, doing more with what we already have, and do so while making the supportive housing service program even more transparent and accountable to the voters. Because here's something that we know. To alleviate the thorniest part of our housing crisis, an affordable housing strategy cannot succeed without the supportive services. And supportive services cannot succeed without substantially more homes for people receiving those services to live in. We must do both, or we will accomplish neither. Our region is still short tens of thousands of affordable housing units, and there's really only two ways to make up that gap. Either home values and rents go down, or we build more housing. and I think everyone in this room would prefer the latter. Here's one of the stories about why these services are so important.
3 years ago, I didn't have anything. I was on the streets. I was alcoholic and drug addict, and it just got me to where I just want to get up in the morning. I'm clean now and just happy. My name is Jay. I work for Cultivate Initiatives. I've worked for them for about 2 years now. I'm a lead on beautification. We just go around the city and just pick up garbage. Yep. Lots and lots of garbage every day. Yep. I was on the street for 16 years, and I hadn't had a job for a long time. I didn't even think I'd ever be back in the working community, like back in the workforce or whatever, but it just makes me want to come to work. I don't use the alarm clock to get up in the morning. I just come to work, ready to go to work at all time, every day. It's just awesome. There's me and then 2 other people, but then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we take out interns who work with us for 5 days, and they make $600, and they do 5 8-hour days. There's people that I've talked to that say they've been out of the workforce for so long, and then just doing those 5 days, just let them know that they can still do it, and then they went out and got a job somewhere else at McDonald's or wherever. Just the 5 days made people change their whole outlook on a lot of things. That's what it was for me. I was just like, how can I get back in the workforce? I've been out of this for so long, and just getting up in the morning, all the other things, and then just knowing that you can do that, just like, wow. 2 years I've been on permit now. In April, it'll be 2 years. Yeah, after 16 years on the streets. Changed my life totally. Absolutely changed my life. It's insane.
Metro gets the last word. There appears to be broad support across stakeholders for using the SHS tax to fund housing and services, full stop. People want government to use the resources we have more wisely and creatively before we ask for more. They see this as a moment and an opportunity to do just that. People support keeping the focus of the funding on the chronically homeless to ensure the original promise of the measure is met. They want governments like Metro, the cities and the counties to work together to achieve better outcomes through stronger accountability. Right now, staff at Metro are using this community alignment to put details to this idea, and we anticipate a recommendation from our COO in the coming months. I support this exploration because we should always be willing to look at doing things differently based on new information, like a huge increase in revenue. We should never stop questioning the status quo if doing so can bring us a system that is more outcome-based, more accountable, and does more with what we have and provides more opportunities for success. This is a complex crisis, and our region must be creative in solving our complex challenges. Part of what makes me so excited about this work is seeing the fruits of our region's commitment to investing in itself and how it pays off. We have reason to celebrate on other long-term investments. Earlier this year, the federal government announced it was investing more than $1 billion in Greater Portland's future, helping us rebuild and connect communities that have been separated by antiquated infrastructure. The Rose Quarters Project's partnership with Albina Vision has the potential to be a national model for unraveling the harms of freeway construction in the 1960s. The voters last night appear to have supported hundreds of millions of dollars in new investments in the Oregon Zoo. The zoo is the state's most significant attraction for visitors, making it so important not just for our conservation efforts at the zoo, but for bringing back tourism to downtown Portland. So important. And so I'm so very happy that the voters saw all of the potential that the zoo has to offer, from the kiddos all the way to bringing downtown back. The voters also supported investments that will protect large businesses and employers near the Columbia River, ensuring that their investments are protected from potential flooding. It also protects the multi-billion-dollar investments at the Portland Airport, which wasn't satisfied as the top of America's best airports list, and is ready to unveil a phenomenal forward-thinking terminal of the future. And finally, yes, finally, we are close to agreement on how to replace our 100-year-old drawbridge across the Columbia River with a modern link that connects transit and freight across the two states. Yeah. In those projects, in what the voters agreed to, we are seeing the power of collaboration, the power of working together, and the power of speaking with one voice. What we see here is a harnessing of potential. We can see that despite the challenges and crises thrown our way, this region is rising to the challenges of the time, something we've done before. For instance, we were about to embark on an update of our 50-year land use plan, the 2040 growth concept, just as lockdown occurred. Clearly, that was not the time to start a conversation about a 50-year future vision. But here we are. We believe we are on our way to having that conversation. As we work to address our urgent day-to-day challenges, people are now aching for a vision. Who are we? Where are we going, and what will it look like when we get there? For 30 years, we have been implementing an extensive and one-of-a-kind vision, and it was a huge lift at the time. It is once again time to ask the hard questions. What has worked? What has not worked? What did we not discuss last time that should have been part of the plan? For instance, what's missing from this clip?
Metro answered with the Region 2040 plan. After the most extensive public involvement campaign in the region's history, Metro's elected council took thousands of citizen comments and adopted the Region 2040 growth concept, a plan for how the region should grow in the next 50 years. During the 2040 planning process, residents made their preferences clear. They want open space and natural areas preserved. They want to maintain affordable housing. They want to redevelop urban areas and create town centers along neighborhood main streets. New developments centered along transit corridors and greater transportation options throughout the region.
And did you hear anything about people? We heard housing and nature and transportation, but we didn't hear human well-being, human connection. And the 2040 plan was about protecting farm and forest land, encouraging walkability, and avoiding sprawl. But as we look to the future, as we look to the middle third of this century, we need to think about more than places. We have to think about people. If the 2040 plan was about building places and protecting places, I want to see Metro start to work on a 2070 plan that is about building and protecting communities. Not communities as collections of buildings, but communities as groups of people. The importance of this has never been more clear. We know that our communities and our society have not yet healed from the wounds of 2020. That means building communities where we see ourselves growing old, our children growing up, our ideas and dreams growing outward. Places where we know our neighbors, our local businesses, and our community representatives. And we need to have ways to implement these ideas to make the values a reality. As John Fregonese would say, a vision without action is hallucination.
Nowhere is the action more obvious than in our 24 cities that make up the region. We have seen incredible transformation of our downtowns. In Beaverton, where restaurants are popping up around new apartments clustered in transit-focused business district. In Lake Oswego, where beautiful apartments overlook the bay and shoppers stroll on 8th Avenue. In Gresham, where downtown continues to flourish. In Rockwood, there are new apartments, some subsidized by the Metro Affordable Housing Bond, with new businesses, public spaces, even a market hall pungent with the smells of African, Indian, Mexican, and Filipino food. Happy Valley is planning a new urban core, just northeast of its City Hall, and Hillsborough continues to reap the rewards of investment by Intel. It's in these communities, these pockets of success, that we see the future of economic development and shared prosperity in our region. For all our talk about Portland proper, And it is vital to ensure the health of our largest city in our state. But the fact is, every community in this region is seeing investment, development, and action. The very point of Metro is to ensure that we have a healthy, economically successful region that serves the needs of people who live here. Let's look again at where we were not too long ago.
If you could identify 25 years ago a city in trouble, Portland would fit that profile. In terms of concerns about deteriorating inner city neighborhoods, we were violating air quality standards 1 day out of 3. Business was fleeing downtown.
Just let that sit there. Now it's always scary to talk about growth and change, especially here in Oregon. A lot of people might say we shouldn't revisit our long-term vision, that maybe we should just try and get by. I reject that. I don't want this region to be average. I don't want us to have a vision for 50 years in the future that still has Oregon ranked 25th on every metric and has Portland sliding backwards in the national economy and cultural framework. Is it scary to think bigger? Of course, but making those goals, those aspirations as part of a long-term vision is the first step to making those goals achievable. Take high-speed rail. You knew I was going to come back to transportation. On its own, it seems impossible, maybe even overwhelming, but make it part of a 50-year plan, and the only pressure is to make forward progress, to keep it on the agenda until you finally get to a critical point where the investment is ready. We can do better. How do I know that? Because we already have. If we raise our eyes from our immediate problems, we can see the incredible positive changes that have come from having a vision and pursuing it together. If you had told Intel in 1994 that Rondler Acres would eventually be part of a $36 billion investment, it would have also seemed overwhelming. Today is part of the routine. The point is that we can't be complacent. That's how we slide backwards. We as a region have to identify our challenges and face them head on. And we have to aim higher for bigger goals. That's the reason we are going to re-engage and reimagine our vision. I look forward to hearing your great ideas, your visions for what could be in our next roadmap. Because here again, once again, we're running right towards the tough conversation. That's our job. I want to leave you with this one last story. One morning while I was working at Metro around 1998, John was late for our bike ride into work. He said he was late because he was having a dream. That he was at a cafe in a Spanish square. He was the child of a Spanish movie director and actress. He was having coffee with his dad and his dad's good friend, Ricardo Montalban. He was catching them up on everything that had been going on in his life. He said he wanted to linger in the dream. My hope is that when I end my term, that John and former Governor Tom McCall and I have a great conversation and a dream, and that we linger in it. And I let them know that their legacy of shining a light on the tough issues and running towards the conversations we have worked so hard to set the region on a journey of working toward together, that they have made a better place for everyone. Have we lost the ability to have these hard conversations? I don't think so. But we do need to get the muscle memory back. So come with us, join us on this journey. Let's invest in ourselves again. Thank you.
I'm not going to tell everybody that we hugged before this. That ruins the drama of the handshake. Hi, how you doing? Thank you for that. One of the things I admire about you as a public leader is that you are a student of history, as we just saw in your remarks, and I really appreciate invoking Tom McCall, invoking the parallels between now and the challenges that we faced as a region in the late 60s and the early 70s. What are lessons to be learned beyond just having hard conversations? What are policy choices, processes you think we need to look back on what they did and learn from that and incorporate now?
Yeah, having lived it, I think one of the things that we all recognize at Metro is that there were huge swaths of population that were left out of the conversation last time. Those who did not have access to being able to participate in such a grand visioning of the region and see themselves in that. And we have certainly changed course at Metro, how we engage people in building community-based organizations so that they have the capacity to actually work with the community that they represent and be able to take the acronyms, which we are so good at in bureaucracies, but specifically in the land use transportation world, and be able to relate them back in their own language, in their own cultural references, and be able to bring people back that information to us and also participate in our communities. So we have a different way of engaging now, and we're gonna have to take off from there. Like, we're gonna have to even get better from that standpoint, because we were certainly not there. I remember being in a meeting with the federal government and listening in on their review of Metro. And they had told us at that time, you don't even understand what environmental justice means. So we've come quite a ways. I'm very proud of that.
I have to follow up. What does environmental justice mean?
It was an early way to name racial inequities, but nobody wanted to say those words out loud.
Let me follow up to that, because all that makes sense. Getting people involved, talking about people.
Yeah.
When we talk land use, that's a novel idea. I think we all approve. How do we do that when at the end of the day there are political decisions that have to be made, and the role of money in politics is so money sways, let's just say?
Well, I also remember a lot of very loud discussions coming from the council office as a small staffer, as they were making decisions to narrow down the variables to get to a 2040 growth concept, right? And there are trade-offs all along. I think, there was more interest to me comparatively back then, where there was more money being poured into both sides back when Metro was first created. I think things have, from my perspective, leveled out. And our most controversial thing used to be expansion of the urban growth boundary, right? And now we're working in parallel with our partners like Chair Vega Peterson, who's here today, thank you very much, on how to actually implement the crisis of the moment, right? How do we work together to solve that? And that's an expansion of how Metro can help facilitate those hard conversations, but you don't see that really playing out in the politics of the elections. At least I don't.
We're going to come back to that. But
Okay, you've got numbers, don't you? You were prepared.
I know you want to talk about transportation, and I do too, love it. How would you describe the state of our transportation network right now?
It's not in a good place, right? We have seen all of the headlines about Oregon Department of Transportation's budget falling off the cliff and not being able to plow roads, and so they had to get a general fund infusion of money. But my point to the state legislature is that the cities and counties fell off that cliff a long time ago. And they have been trying to plug gaps in maintenance and operation alone, and that is their number one goal, is just be able to pave the streets, replace the bridges that need to be replaced. So we need an infusion of money, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm promoting the numbers I'm about to say of Washington State versus Oregon, but I think it's good to understand what our neighbors are doing and where we are and what we have or have not invested in ourselves. Over the last 20 years, Washington State has put $50 billion into roadways and $55 billion into light rail, and we have put $2.5 billion into roadways and $1 billion into light rail. So are we growing with our population needs? No. Are we actually maintaining the roads and maintaining our transit systems? No. So we have a long way to go, and I think we have a hard conversation because the gas tax isn't going to cut it for the future. And I'm very supportive of the legislature having that hard conversation about how to pay for transportation.
Well, and that's a question that we got from a number of audience members, which is we know what we need to do on transportation. How are we going to pay for it? And how, as an elected leader, do you convince people to pay for it?
Well, what we do know is that Oregon was the first state in the union to have a gas tax, and I've always said we should be the first to move away from it. I think we have several options that the legislature needs to look at, but it should not be based on the fuel, right? Because that's a losing battle. So road user fee is out there. It's been piloted. We're one of the first states to have a pilot program. Other states, I think they're 15 now, are moving forward with this because we're in crisis.
Where are you now on tolling, congestion prices, more creative ways of raising money for transportation?
You know, having overseen a department that had a congestion pricing and tolling program, that was a very hard conversation for Washington State, just like it's been a hard conversation for us. I think where we need to think more closely about is what are the benefits and how do we work with our cities and counties. Oregon Department of Transportation was very focused on a project and not about a system. And that happens a lot when you have departments and silos that they see what their job is to do is replace the bridge, and this is what they were told to do. We need to raise our heads up, look around, and say, how does it benefit the entirety of the southwest portion of the region, not just the state? And I think the cities of Clackamas County and Clackamas County were right to question, what is the benefit?
Oh, yes, they are. You sounded very confident about the I-5 replacement bridge. Where does that confidence come from?
There is, again, getting back to collaboration, there is a hard conversation that we need to have with ourselves as a city, as a region, as a state, that the enemy, right, the enemy of the perfect, anyway, I'm not for perfection, I am for 80% of perfect. Right, there is a tipping point at which things get too expensive or the project dies because you can't achieve everything. And I think what we're finding and learning again is how everybody can say, this is my perfect, but here's where I'm willing to work with you. And that's what we have right now amongst the elected officials, amongst the greater Portland and greater Vancouver region, between the ports, between the two states, between the two governors, is like, we're not going to get the perfect bridge, but we're going to get a damn good bridge.
Do you feel like there is more mutual respect now than there was the last time we went through this?
Yes.
For style of life choices on the two sides of the river?
Yes, because, yes. So many reasons. Yeah. Well, I think it has to do with the leadership. Mayor Ann of Vancouver has lived in Vancouver for a very long time, but worked in our region for a very long time and has used that bridge every day to commute. She understands both regions, and when she doesn't, she's very inquisitive and wants to find out, what am I missing here? And that curiosity from leadership about what can I do to help you on your side of the river, and what can I do, what do I need you for on this side of the river, right? That back and forth has been nonstop for the last 3 years.
It can't hurt that downtown Vancouver is
Bustling.
crushing it right now. And I do wonder if some of our Oregon arrogance about that style of living and the choices they make maybe eroding a little bit.
Yeah, well, a lot of Oregonians are moving to Vancouver.
Is there a spot in the region that you look at and go, that is what transportation is supposed to look like? That is the goal. That's what we're trying to get to.
That's a good question. I think the east side of our region, both in Multnomah County and Clackamas County, have an amazing grid of streets, which allows for an amazing grid of transit service. I think that's really helpful. That makes it easier, right? It's harder on the west side where you have all this topography. But no matter where you are in the region, we still don't have safe streets to cross, right? And we are not connecting the suburbs. We're still hub and spoke in our transit. So I think we have great spots, where we've done a lot of investment in our downtowns or along some corridors, but we need to like complete it, right? That's part of the problem is we've done these one-offs and they really work well in our downtowns and along these corridors, but they're not complete. They're not providing safety and access for everybody.
If I was to give you a big pot of money and maybe a magic wand, what is one step you would take to get there?
Yeah, you know, the work that we did in communities with the 13 corridors or in the transportation ballot measure were the exact way that we need to start thinking about transportation is that we need to build it from the user's perspective. And they identified small businesses, folks who live and work in the districts like 82nd, people who live there, work there, invest there. They said, this is what I need. And then the traffic engineers came in and said, this is how we give you what you need, right? Instead of the traffic engineer saying, I'm gonna put all the money into that signal, it was more about safe crossings. It was more about access into businesses. It was more about moving more people on buses.
You mentioned the city of Portland and the incredible success we've had as a region in some of the ring cities and the 24 cities, everything beyond Portland. I do wonder, as the leader of Metro, what do you see as your role when it comes to the health of Portland proper?
We have been doing everything that we can during the pandemic and through this homeless measure and with specific developments in Portland proper to basically help accelerate the good that's happening, right? So whether it's Albina Vision Trust that we have put money both into their planning efforts as well as their purchase efforts to bring their vision to life, we have been there through our Parks Bond measure and our planning grants. We have done that also with OMSI and the new development there. And then obviously the homeless service support measure, the acceleration of getting that money in there into the system, into the counties, and trying to stay out of the county's way as much as possible. Chair, you're just amazing. No, but trying to stay out of the way as much as possible so that people can get their work done, but still moving and trying to be that accelerant. I think that's what we do best is provide the accelerant to make things happen faster.
Are the jobs going to come back downtown?
You know, I think they're going to come back down, but it's going to be different, right? And it's going to be slower than anybody wants to have happen. But I think we're going to see there's already people, you know, coming in and leasing out small businesses because now they can afford to be downtown. Nonprofits that are moving downtown because now they can afford to be there. So it'll be different.
How does that change how you think about planning and growth in Metro's role?
We got to start again connecting the suburbs. Right, the suburbs are growing right now. They're not starting from the same place. They're actually more expensive to bring back up, but they have deserved this kind of level of investment for a very long time.
You touched a lot on homelessness, which is another issue that I think everybody in the room has top of mind, especially as we're here in downtown Portland. There's on every corner illustrations of the things we've failed to solve. You talked about what a complicated problem this is: addiction, the social safety net, mental health care, and housing stock. What is Metro's role? Is it just housing or does it go beyond that?
Obviously, building housing and again being an accelerant into the already existing 7 housing authorities within the region has been hugely helpful. But we also have the urban growth boundary, and we're in the middle of the urban growth boundary report, which will say what is the minimum and maximum that we need to consider for the next 20 years of growth. Do we need an urban growth boundary expansion or do we not? And that conversation is really about infill. How much more infill can we get? And if we can't, if the need is still higher, then do you need an urban growth boundary expansion? And I think we all recognize we're in a housing crisis, and we know that we have a council that's very interested in looking at all of the tools in our toolbox, and this is one of them. So we'll be looking at this very carefully about how do we actually, again, be the accelerant, because whatever we bring into the urban growth boundary will take years to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. But it is that forethought of being able to make sure we're on a trajectory to making sure we have enough housing for everybody, because we don't have enough housing for everybody right now.
Well, and that gets to an interesting quandary, which is we have parts of the region that are not growing and are in some cases actively shrinking, and we have a giant housing crisis. How do you, as a policymaker, reconcile that?
There's definitely demand to move out to the suburbs, and that's driving up prices. The problem is that it's the entirety of the region that doesn't have enough housing, right? It doesn't matter where you move. If you have the means and the access, you're going to drive up housing prices wherever you move. So that's causing the problem of people moving out of the urban growth boundary and moving into cities outside, and putting pressure on them and putting pressure on our transportation system to get back in. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily affordable. You might get housing that's affordable outside of the Portland metro region or slightly more, but now your transportation costs just went up.
Providing options for everyone, no matter how they want to live.
Yep.
A number of audience members wanted to talk about the supportive housing services tax. One of the questions, more pointed, I like this one. How will you work to ensure that the city and counties effectively spend the funds Metro gives them for housing?
Yeah, I think that is our main job. And we are working right now with the counties on how to collect more data so that we can work with them on performance metrics, and then how do we measure that over time. I think that's something that we're working out right now. And I think the most important thing when we started this was just to get the services out onto the street and start moving people off the street. And the measures that we've depended on are measures that the federal government and the state government had already had in process. And so I think that was the right thing to do. And now moving into, we've got programs set up, we're growing them. Now is the time to say, all right, let's look at the data. This is our role. Let's look at how we can grow that system on behalf of the counties, and really find ways to be able to articulate the trends.
Are you confident at this point that you and your partners at the City of Portland with the counties are on the same page about tweaks that need to be made?
I think we're getting closer. Yeah. I think recognizing, this is part of the collaboration process, right? Is recognizing and having empathy for the things the barriers that might be in the way of the counties, but also the counties having empathy of, Metro is at the forefront. This is through Metro. How do we work with Metro in a different way? Because again, when we came into the space of urban growth boundaries 45 years ago, when the state said, hey, Metro, you're going to create an urban growth boundary, we were in the cities and counties space all of a sudden. It was not a happy place to be. There was a lot of contentious behavior, right? Because there was no roles and responsibilities were not defined yet. They had to be worked out. And that's where we are now, is we're working that out.
Do you have any concerns about the learning curve when we have a new form of government in the city of Portland, and how Metro works with this new crop of Portland city leaders who are figuring out what their jobs are?
I think we're always going to be concerned when there's changes and how to bring people up to speed. But I truly believe that a city manager form of government will help us streamline that conversation.
We are headed toward a new approach in the city of Portland and the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office when it comes to public camping. Where are you on public camping right now?
I think that obviously COVID and lockdown, that was a specific case and problem. I think that we need to make sure that downtown is safe for everybody, whether you're homeless or not, and whether you're coming into this theater or not. I think everybody needs to feel safe, and that's where we're going to have to put our time and attention and the resources into making sure that we are having events and they are safe for everybody here. But I think that the city's on the right track. Right now that the resources are flowing, it is certainly within their purview to start thinking about, okay, what do we want downtown to look like after this?
And that wasn't just a mean gotcha question. No. I do wonder, I mean, we hear about Metro managing 18,000 acres. And it's, I imagine, we've seen it before, if you crack down on camping in one place, the portion of the houseless population that truly is not going to go into shelter is going to go somewhere else. Metro has a lot of open space.
We do.
Do you worry about the impact?
Yeah, I think everybody outside the city of Portland, including the neighborhoods, have cause to think, okay, so now how are you gonna make sure that I'm safe in my neighborhood, safe in my park? I think every city and county in the entire nation is struggling with this very topic. But what I can say is that our staff are amazing, and they're getting the training that they need to not just make sure that people have a wonderful experience in our parks, but also that the homeless that do come onto our property are well taken care of, and taken care of in an empathetic way.
Does the city of Portland, when it is in the process of coming up with a new approach to camping, consult with its partners about potential impacts?
That's a good question. I think that we all recognize that the city of Portland is so important that we're going to work together to figure out how to make this work, right? And we keep each other informed, but everybody has to make their own decision.
So,
But not in a bad way.
just so they're busy.
Yeah.
They're busy. You read the papers.
Yeah.
You listen to OPD. You know what's happening.
Yeah, I do listen to OPD. I do know what's
I really
happening.
appreciate that. If you want to become a member or increase your membership, we can talk later. You talk about new kinds of businesses coming into downtown and in some of the suburban downtowns as well. What is Metro's role in attracting businesses?
Yeah, well, we work very closely with Greater Portland, Inc., quasi-public nonprofit that is the main kind of workforce, putting Oregon and Portland and all of the cities in the region out there and kind of ear to the ground across the country of who's thinking about moving and who's thinking about growing. And then I think we're here to help the cities and counties, again, be the accelerant for the infrastructure that they need if they do attract something. So, really the Intel conversation, the CHIPS manufacturing, CHIPS Act, the work that we did was to make sure that we were ready to go to the legislature.
You talked a couple times in your remarks about having the hard conversations, being able to do what a generation of elected and non-elected leaders did in the 1970s and 1980s. Do we have the structures and mechanisms in place to have those?
To have those conversations? Yeah. Yes, I think we do at Metro because that's what we do all day. We have to do this all day, every day. We are never off, right? But I think that engaging people back to the entirety of the region, like I said, it's going to be hard because we don't have the muscle memory. And because we have gotten to this point in society, we are either one side or the other, and there is very little room for people to be in the middle and trying to figure out how to get to that 80% of perfect. But I think this is exactly why we should do it, is because if you can get everybody in a room and have them start playing around with the variables, and they start to look at the person across the table that they sat down with, that they thought they were going to be on the extreme edge of no and hell no, suddenly they're like, oh, I can see your point. You're right, that's the way we should go. And what John taught me is you sit down 200 people at tables of 10 and ask them how to design the future, and pretty much they all come up with the same thing at the end of the day, because they all had to weigh the pros and cons together. But yeah, I think we have the mechanisms to do it, and I think we've grown a lot more since then.
Metro has a prime piece of real estate in North Portland out at the Expo Center.
Yes.
53 acres that is right now underutilized and aging. What do you want to see happen there? I know conversations are ongoing. What would your preference be?
Well, the entire Metro Council is 100% solidly behind a very exciting opportunity, which is to take this and move it towards a sports facility. There are sports facilities like what we have in mind in Spokane and Sacramento, and all of the families in this region are traveling nonstop with their little kids to all of these tournaments across the West Coast, but they're not here. So there's a huge market that we can actually bring to North Portland, but it's so exciting because the opportunities are amazing in terms of who we can bring in, what kind of tournaments, what kind of things. I think that you know that just last year we had the first Black Rodeo and Expo, and we have volleyball tournaments all the time. So it's not new to us, the sports idea, but growing it and making it a huge part of Northeast Portland's activity center, but also bringing visitors back to Oregon is going to be huge.
How do we pay for that?
Yeah. And that's the question on the table right now. We have a task force that's looking at that, and it's everything from, obviously, from public to public-private partnerships to public-private nonprofit partnerships to private. Like, the spectrum is on the table right now, but what we do know is that a decision needs to be made in order to move forward, and this region needs this excitement. It needs it right now, like a shot in the arm of adrenaline. It needs to be proud of itself
So I have
again.
to drive I-5 to get there.
Yeah, but you can also take Lakeville.
Very fair point, very fair. Softball. We have a couple more minutes before the reception, so I two closing questions. And the first one, let's get dark for a second. What about your job wakes you up in the middle of the night? What is your biggest worry?
I'd say two things. One is that there are still folks that we, as a region, want to and can't serve yet, but we're making progress. But it does, I think all of us feel that anxiety about that. And so, again, trying to use all the tools that Metro has, all the tools the state has, trying to accelerate that process. The second thing, and it's what I walked into Metro before homeless was on our plate, that I'll just bring up, and I'm so glad that the zoo bond passed. We have thousands of souls at the zoo that need to be taken care of. And I knew that would be something that would be weighing on my heart. And I'm just so proud of the Oregon Zoo because when we went into lockdown, you all know we laid off 750 people. This venue shut down, the convention center shut down, the Expo Center and the Oregon Zoo had to shut down. We were able to keep the zookeepers because of the Oregon Zoo Foundation. They raised $2.5 million in 2 weeks. And we were able to feed the animals. So when I walked into Metro, that was my number one worry. Everybody was very excited that I would be president of Metro and overseeing the zoo, and to me that was the hardest thing. Because when you're an engineer and it's all concrete and asphalt, it's one thing. And the driving safety, right, the safety of the public driving is a very big factor. But knowing that you've got that on you, that's a lot.
And that red panda. So
cute.
Look at that red panda down there.
I know. There's the upside.
Let me flip it and let's go optimistic to close things. I mean, you have had opportunities in the past few years to run for other things. You have chosen to stay in this role. What about this job gives you the most hope?
This place and these people are still fundamentally the most creative, the most innovative, and the most caring community that I've been a part of. And this region, and I say region because it's so important to remember there is so much happening around Portland that is so special that Portland can learn from. And I think that's why I feel like I'm necessary in this moment, is because I have lived the suburbs. I have lived the outside of Portland now for the majority of my time in Oregon, and there is so much special that Portland can learn from, and I think we need that back and forth, and we need that push to say, Portland, you can do better, and you will do better, because the cities outside have struggled way before you, and they are doing great. And so how do we take those lessons learned, and we collaborate across the cities and really take heed from that? I think that's exciting to me, is that's where we're at. And really bring everybody back together on the same page.
So it's solvable.
It's solvable. Anything to an engineer is solvable.
That concludes our program. Thank you for your public service, Lynn. Thank you for your thoughtful conversation.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you to the City Club of Portland for hosting us today. Thanks to each one of you for spending some time with us. You can do a recording of this forum and everything else City Club does at the City Club website. And for those of you in person, there's going to be a short reception after the program. City Club staff will guide you there. Thank you. I'm Anna Griffin.